Toyota's entry into Haas isn't a friendly corporate sponsorship. It's a cold takeover of driver selection, wrapped in a technical partnership. Gene Haas signed over his team's ultimate driver authority to Toyota Gazoo Racing in exchange for wind tunnel infrastructure, TPC operational budgets, and high-end carbon manufacturing scale. Now the leanest team on the grid faces a direct ultimatum: hand over FP1 sessions, simulator development programs, and future race seats to Toyota's driver pipeline, or lose the industrial engine keeping them competitive. Gene Haas spent a decade running a lean business model dependent on Ferrari parts and Dallara chassis manufacturing. But the modern budget cap and aerodynamic testing restrictions hand total advantage to massive factory infrastructure. Team principal Ayao Komatsu needed a massive structural upgrade to stop Haas from sinking to the bottom of the Constructors' Championship. Akio Toyota offered that upgrade, but it came with a non-negotiable contract clause that completely strips Gene Haas of his total control over the driver lineup. Before we break down the exact mechanics of this contract, hit subscribe to join the deepest F1 technical breakdowns on YouTube, and tell me in the comments, would you trade your team's driver independence for Toyota's factory muscle? Let's trace how a quiet technical loophole turned into the ultimate driver ultimatum on the F1 grid. To understand why Gene Haas was forced to accept Toyota's terms, you have to look at the massive structural flaw in the Haas business model. Since entering Formula One in 2016, Haas operated as a lean aggregator. Under Appendix 6 of the FIA Financial Regulations and Listed Team Components rules, Haas bought everything legally permissible from Ferrari: power units, gearboxes, rear impact structures, hydraulics, and suspension geometry. For the rest of the chassis, floor, and aerodynamic surfaces, they paid Dallara in Italy to design and manufacture the composite tub. It was a brilliant cost-cutting strategy for the old era, before cost caps existed. But when the FIA introduced the financial fair play regulations and strict aerodynamic testing restrictions, that outsourcing model fractured completely. ATR scales wind tunnel run hours and CFD items based on championship position. Worse, Article 17 of the Financial Regulations forces teams to calculate external contractor costs with rigid overhead adjustments. Paying Dallara meant paying a third-party profit markup that directly ate away at their usable budget cap ceiling. While rival teams built internal composite facilities, automated their simulation loops, and optimized their manufacturing turnarounds, Haas was stuck in a slow, fragmented supply chain. They were bringing a knife to a 200 miles per hour gunfight. Every time they needed a floor revision or an upgraded front wing assembly, it had to be routed through third-party supply chains across 3 different countries. The latency in their engineering pipeline meant that while Red Bull or McLaren could design, test, and manufacture an aerodynamic floor upgrade in 3 weeks, Haas needed 6 to 8 weeks. By the time a new floor arrived at the track, their rivals had already moved on to the next iteration. Enter Toyota Gazoo Racing. Toyota famously walked away from Formula One in 2009 after spending billions of dollars with 0 Grand Prix victories or championships to show for it. But Toyota never abandoned their elite racing infrastructure. Their massive facility in Cologne, Germany, Toyota Motorsport GmbH, now rebranded as TGR Europe, boasts some of the most advanced wind tunnels, composite autoclaves, dynamic engine dynos, and driver-in-the-loop simulators on the entire planet. For years, Toyota maintained this facility while winning multiple Le Mans 24 Hours titles and World Endurance Championships, while also renting out wind tunnel time to teams like McLaren. Ayao Komatsu identified the exact entry point. Toyota didn't want to pay the massive anti-dilution fee mandated by the Concord Agreement to form an 11th team from scratch. They wanted an immediate, low-risk doorway back into the F1 paddock without burning hundreds of millions of dollars on a fresh engine development project. Haas, on the other hand, desperately needed manufacturing capacity, rapid aerodynamic prototyping, and a dedicated testing division that wouldn't drain their primary operational budget cap. The mechanism that made this deal work is buried deep in Article 10.2 of the FIA sporting regulations. Testing of previous cars, known across the paddock as TPC. TPC rules allow teams to run cars at least 2 years old for unlimited track mileage, outside the standard operational budget cap, provided the cars use historical component specifications and control electronics. Running a dedicated TPC program is wildly expensive. It requires a completely separate traveling pit crew, continuous engine mileage allocations, transport logistics, and track rental fees at circuits like Jerez or Imola. Haas, operating on a shoestring budget compared to Ferrari or Mercedes, could never afford a full-time TPC operation on their own. Toyota stepped in with a massive offer. TGR Europe would completely staff, fund, and operate Haas's TPC testing division. They would send Toyota engineers, mechanics, and data analysts directly to the track to gain real-world F1 operational experience. In return, Toyota attached a non-negotiable condition directly to Gene Haas's desk, a complete pipeline contract for Toyota-backed driver development. If you were a rival team principal like James Vowles at Williams or Laurent Mekies at RB, would you immediately file a formal FIA inquiry into Toyota's off-grid TPC data sharing, or would you construct a similar corporate partnership with a major auto manufacturer? The operational reality of this contract reaches far beyond trackside mechanics. It cuts straight into the engineering heart of the car. In modern F1, track performance is strictly dictated by correlation. How accurately your factory simulation software matches real-world tire degradation, track surface roughness, and high-speed ground effect aerodynamic load. Before this deal, Haas lacked a modern, dedicated driver-in-the-loop simulator of their own. They rented time on Ferrari's rig in Maranello, taking whatever leftover time slots were available after Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz finished setting up their own cars. Toyota changed that overnight by opening the doors to their multi-million-dollar Cologne simulation center. Haas now gets direct access to elite real-time telemetry processing, virtual car setup calibration, and advanced driver correlation. But handing over those keys gave Toyota massive structural leverage over the team's long-term decisions. This is where the driver ultimatum takes full effect. Toyota is not spending tens of millions of dollars in carbon manufacturing, wind tunnel calibration, and engineering manpower to act as a silent sponsor with a small logo on the engine cover. Akio Toyoda built this partnership to create a direct pipeline for Japanese driving talent and engineering staff to reach the absolute top tier of global motorsport. The ultimatum dictated to Gene Haas contains a strict, non-negotiable operational structure. Toyota-backed drivers must receive a mandatory quota of official FP1 rookie practice sessions during Grand Prix weekends, primary simulator evaluation hours at Cologne, and dedicated track time in Haas's newly established TPC program. Furthermore, the contract includes a structured right of first refusal clause for future race seats. For a decade, Gene Haas used driver seats as leverage for commercial survival or driver stability. He sold seats to pay drivers like Nikita Mazepin when liquidity was tight, or he hired experienced veterans like Nico Hülkenberg and Kevin Magnussen to guarantee consistent points finishes without wrecking expensive carbon chassis. Toyota's ultimatum completely destroys that traditional freedom. If Gene Haas tries to sell a seat to an outside commercial bidder or sign a driver outside Toyota's approved development circle, the technical deal crumbles instantly. If the driver pipeline is blocked, the factory support, wind tunnel pricing, and composite manufacturing access vanish overnight. Gene Haas didn't just sign a corporate partnership, he signed away his absolute power over the pit wall. Consider the mechanical workload Toyota is absorbing. Under modern ground effect rules, floor flex and porpoising are the biggest enemies of lap time performance. Floor assemblies are constructed from complex, multi-layered carbon fiber weaves that require massive autoclaves and specialized cure cycles. In the past, if Haas suffered heavy floor damage during a sprint weekend, their entire spare parts inventory was thrown into chaos because Dallara was miles away in Italy, handling multiple external projects. Toyota's TGR Europe facility in Cologne provides Haas with a dedicated manufacturing pipeline capable of rapidly producing custom carbon components, lightweight chassis parts, and complex aerodynamic devices at factory scale. Furthermore, Toyota's telemetry engineers are directly integrating their own custom data analysis algorithms into Haas's trackside operations. When a Haas car is running during Friday practice, telemetry data flows simultaneously to the pit wall, Ferrari's power unit engineers, and Toyota's mission control center in Cologne. This three-way data loop allows Toyota to analyze tire temperature distribution, aerodynamic pressure taps, and suspension load data in real time. Toyota engineers gain high-speed F1 data processing experience, while Haas gets an army of remote data analysts calculating optimal race strategies and stint lengths without adding to their trackside personnel count, which is strictly capped by FIA sporting rules. Most casual fans believe Gene Haas owns 100% of his team's destiny because his name is printed on the side pod, but in modern F1, does a customer team really exist? Or are non-works teams just glorified satellite outfits for auto giants? The human drama inside this corporate power move is intense. Consider the psychological position of Gene Haas. He is a self-made industrial billionaire who built Haas Automation into a global machine tool empire. He went to federal prison, fought the IRS, and entered Formula One, strictly to market his CNC machine tools to international manufacturers. He always maintained a strict financial rule. Haas Automation would never throw endless cash into a pit. He insisted that the F1 team must run lean, break even through prize money and sponsorships, and keep team expenditure strictly at the minimum threshold required to survive. For years, former team principal Günther Steiner was the public lightning rod, taking the heat from media and fans for poor track performance, while secretly begging Gene Haas for capital investments that never arrived. Steiner wanted a bigger budget, internal software tools, and a larger engineering team. Gene Haas refused, believing that buying parts from Ferrari and Dallara was the only sustainable path. When Haas fired Steiner and promoted Ayao Komatsu to team principal, rival paddock insiders assumed Komatsu was just a quiet internal choice who would do whatever Gene Haas commanded. Instead, Komatsu executed a cold, precise engineering maneuver. Komatsu knew that relying solely on Ferrari and Dallara was a slow path to extinction under the modern budget cap. Ferrari's primary focus is always Maranello, and their customer priority shifts depending on engine supply deals, driver academy needs, and structural politics. By bringing Toyota Gazoo Racing to the table, Komatsu gave Haas the industrial scale of a top-tier factory constructor, without asking Gene Haas to spend a single dollar of his own money. But to pull this off, Komatsu had to force Gene Haas to face a cold, uncomfortable reality. Adapt, or watch the team sink permanently to the bottom of the Constructors' Championship. Gene Haas had to swallow his corporate pride, stop viewing driver seats as his personal property, and hand control of the driver pipeline over to Toyota's executive board in Japan. This shift completely reshapes the psychological balance inside the team. Haas is no longer just a scrap metal American outfit operating out of Banbury and Canapolis with off-the-shelf Italian parts. It is becoming an operational sandbox for Toyota's global racing division. The American team identity is getting quietly refitted into an aggressive Japanese industrial pipeline. Inside the garage, the dynamic has shifted dramatically. British, Italian, and American mechanics now work alongside Toyota's elite Japanese engineers, dispatched from Cologne and Toyota City. The language of the team is shifting from pure survival to high-precision execution. Toyota mechanics on the TPC team are being trained in high-pressure pit stops, rapid gear ratio changes, and emergency carbon repairs. They aren't just guest observers. They are being conditioned for full-scale Formula One operations. For the drivers currently in the seat, or aiming for a future with Haas, the pressure is immense. Oliver Behrman, who was placed at Haas through Ferrari's driver academy, now sits in a garage caught between two automotive titans. Ferrari supplies the engine and gearbox, while Toyota supplies the manufacturing, wind tunnel, and simulator infrastructure. If a driver backed by Ferrari struggles on track, Toyota's driver pipeline is waiting right behind them, with millions of dollars in backing and thousands of TPC testing miles already completed. The seat is no longer a cozy development spot, it is a high-stakes battleground between Maranello and Toyota City. Will the FIA close the TPC staffing loophole before the next Concord agreement? Or will Toyota's success force Ferrari and Mercedes to completely rewrite their customer component supply contracts? The grid-wide fallout from this ultimatum is sending shockwaves through rival team principals. Look at what Toyota accomplished with a single contract. To start a brand new Formula One team from scratch today, an automotive manufacturer must pay a minimum $600 million anti-dilution fee under the Concord Agreement, build a $200 million factory, recruit 800 specialized employees, and spend 3 years developing an engine program. Toyota bypassed every single one of those commercial barriers. By leveraging Haas's existing constructor entry, Toyota bought full operational access to F1 track testing, telemetry loops, aerodynamic correlation, and driver development for a tiny fraction of the cost of a full works entry. They effectively created a backdoor works program right under the nose of the FIA. This leaves rival independent teams in a deeply dangerous position. Williams has invested heavily in modernizing their Grove factory under Doralton Capital, fighting to build internal software systems from scratch. Alpine is burning through team principles while surrendering their works engine status to buy customer Mercedes power units. Sauber is being completely absorbed by Audi in a multi-hundred-million-dollar corporate takeover. Yet Haas, with the smallest staff on the grid, suddenly has the full weight of Toyota's Cologne manufacturing plant standing directly behind them. Rival constructors know that Toyota's driver ultimatum isn't just about giving Japanese drivers FP1 outings during practice sessions. It's about building a fully trained operational unit of drivers, race engineers, aerodynamicists, and software specialists inside Haas. When the massive 2026 technical regulations hit, bringing active aerodynamics, redesigned chassis dimensions, and revised power unit energy deployment, Haas will no longer be waiting in line for third-party composite parts. They will have Toyota's automated manufacturing lines, producing lightweight carbon components at peak speed. The driver lineup becomes the ultimate weapon in this setup. A driver trained continuously in Toyota's Cologne simulator, paired with thousands of TPC track miles in previous spec cars, enters an official FP1 session or a full race seat with far more system preparation than a standard rookie coming out of Formula 2. Toyota turned Haas's financial vulnerability into a weaponized testing ground. Think about the technical advantage this creates during a race weekend. While other small teams rely on driver feedback to tweak setup options between Friday practice sessions, Haas can send real-time track telemetry straight to Toyota's Cologne facility. In Cologne, a Toyota-backed driver can jump into the driver-in-the-loop simulator, run hundreds of virtual setup iterations overnight, and send optimized damper settings, wing angles, and differential maps back to the track team before Saturday morning FP3. That level of overnight simulation loop was previously reserved exclusively for top-tier factory teams like Red Bull, Mercedes, and Ferrari. Now Haas has that exact same capability powered by Toyota. If Toyota demands a full race seat for a Toyota-backed driver in 2026, should Haas break their Ferrari power unit ties completely, or can they survive serving two giant masters at the same time? This agreement completely redefines the survival model for independent Formula One teams under the budget cap era. The days of a private owner running an F1 team purely on personal capital, local sponsorship deals, and pay driver money are officially over. By trading driver seat sovereignty for high-end manufacturing, wind tunnel access, and TPC track miles, Haas exposed the brutal reality of modern F1. If you don't own a factory, you have to sell a piece of your team's autonomy to someone who does. Toyota didn't buy Haas through an expensive equity acquisition or a public share buyout. They bought the steering wheel by providing the industrial capacity Haas couldn't build on their own. This setup proves that global automotive giants can secure real-world F1 track time, engineering integration, and driver pipeline seats without risking $500 million on a brand-new entry. Gene Haas got the technical lifeline his team desperately needed to survive under the strict cost cap regulations, but Toyota dictated the terms line by line. The smallest team on the grid is no longer just trying to survive week to week. It is operating as the forward-deployed strike unit for one of the largest automakers on the planet. Is Gene Haas a genius for securing free factory support without selling team equity? Or did he just sign away the soul and independence of his racing team to Toyota? Drop your verdict in the comments below.